Steelers fans, we now know not only who definitively is the QB1, because as I told y'all for months, it was going to be Mitch Trubisky, but we also know who the offensive team captains are. I want to talk about that a lot in a lot of different directions, the directions of the offense on this new leadership and what it says for the upcoming season. Also, we're going to talk about these Steelers cornerbacks and are they ready for the Bengals wide receivers? All that and more right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter, joined today by Jeff Hathhorn of 93.7 The Fan. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on this video if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content whenever we release them. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money per entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On at PrizePicks.com. Joining me, as I said earlier, is Jeff Hathhorn from 93.7 The Fan. His triumphant debut on.
Telling you what, as a radio guy, that was impressive stuff there, Chris.
Listen, man, people call me. So I don't know, Jeff, I don't know if you know like rappers, but there's this one rapper named Twista who just raps like that. He just says a million words a second, and people have called me Twista on this show because I read that opening so fast. But thank you, sir. This is a true radio professional. First of all, Steelers fans, if you don't know Jeff Hathhorn, go follow him on Twitter. Go check him out. He's on 93.7 The Fan all the time. I call it the Hathhorn hustle because if there's a way to cover the Steelers and Pitt, this man has invented it, created it, and then reinvented it when the Steelers have changed up how they operate. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Hathhorn. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm good, Chris. I'm just following your lead, man. I'm just following your lead.
Please. We're all following Jeff's lead. Anyways, let's get right to the nitty-gritty. I'm going to get to the QB depth chart in a minute because to me, that's not super news. We knew Mitch was going to be QB1, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I did think it was interesting. The Steelers announced their captains. Now, Cam Heyward, TJ Watt, we all know that's pretty straightforward. Miles Killebrew, I think, is a good sign of how much they believe in him for special teams. But he's been a vet. If you've been around the team, not too much of a surprise, kind of like Miles is still the guy. That's good to know. But the offense, that's where I think it was interesting. Not that it's shocking, but now that we finally see Mitch Trubisky's a captain and Najee Harris is a captain, Jeff, what does this say to you about the face of this team and how this offense is going to be led moving forward?
Well, it's interesting because gone are the days of Ben Roethlisberger, Hines Ward, Marquise Pouncey, the names that we knew that kind of worked their way into being captain because they've been around a while. And I was thinking about this. I'm like, wow, they got a lot of young guys that are captains, but they got a lot of young guys.
Yeah.
I mean, who on offense is really more experienced or is someone that you would point to and say, yeah, this guy has to be the captain of our offense? Nobody. They're all young. All the key players are young. And I think it speaks, to both guys. First of all, it speaks to Trubisky. Mm-hmm. You come into a team, the quarterback's going to be the leader anyhow. And as it's shown in the past, the quarterback doesn't necessarily have to be the captain with the Steelers. There were many years where Ben Roethlisberger was not voted captain, but they thought enough of him, the way he came in, the way he adapted to the Steeler way. He learned names. He on and off the field, he did things in the community. Like they respected the way that he approached this chance. And obviously they named him captain. For Najee, I mean, they know Najee's the workhorse, right? I mean, most touches in the NFL, they know they're going to count on him. And he has been doing some things more he does do some talking, but it has been more leadership, the shape he's in, the way he attacks practice. And I think they respect him for that. And I mean, I don't know if you could pick 2 other guys. I mean, maybe you could do Najee alone. But really, when you look at this offense, maybe Deontay Johnson would be another one that probably got some votes, but just not enough to be captain.
See, here's the thing. I think when Najee speaks, everyone can hear Najee. When Deontay speaks, I got to like turn up my volume on my microphone because he's too quiet. And I think that's part of what Deontay comes off like a really good role model and like lead by following type of guy.
Right.
Like that was Heath Miller. Heath Miller was never the loudest guy in the room, right? But you knew if you followed what he did, you'd be doing something right. But he wasn't the guy in the center of the room that everyone rallied behind, who carried the flag onto the field or anything like that. And I think that's important to have that. But for Najee to be that already, I think that also played a role into why the Steelers drafted him in the first round. And it really seems like the Steelers have been making an effort to get these type of guys, especially of late, Najee Harris, Kenny Pickett, these type of guys who can be, Kenny Pickett is known for his leadership skills. Najee Harris was known as a leader of men when he was with Alabama. A lot of people were like, oh, a running back, you can't draft a running back. Oh, he's not going to get enough. He's going to get too much wear and tear. Why would you do that? But I think a big part of this is Mike Tomlin knows that with Ben Roethlisberger being gone, there's another reset button that he has to push to kind of get things rearranged. And what better way to hit a reset button with a bunch of high character guys who not only do you believe in, but your players believe in and can follow. And I think that this captain situation shows a big part of their hand as far as how they see their development of this offense moving forward in the next few years.
And they're also the two most important skill players on the offense. I mean,
Agreed.
If Trubisky doesn't go, they don't win. If Najee doesn't go, they're going to have a really hard time winning. So it's guys that they're going to have to count on that's going to have to do that at a high level. And, I know Cam Hayward's worked with Najee and talked to him about being a leader. But, you can't tell a guy like, hey, we signed a new quarterback. He gets on a flight, gets here to Pittsburgh to be there the first day that Mitch is here to talk to him about what the offense is going to look like. Like, you can say all you want to a guy, but that's something that comes from here. I mean, and I think that's what they really liked about Najee Harris. And now they'll get to go watch a guy that's going to touch it 30, 40 times a game, probably, even though they would like him to touch it less. It's probably going to happen like that.
Right.
And he's going to be your leader. They're going to listen to what he has to say.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely what you're going to see here with the Steelers. And to me, this is not a bad thing. I think, in fact, this is a good sign that they have an idea of where things are going to go. They have a good sign of how the difference of the offense is going to be. And again, I said this years ago, back in 2017, when we weren't sure how much longer Ben Roethlisberger had. I thought it was going to be paramount that they find a way to keep Le'Veon Bell around at the time when we thought he was coming back and he wasn't going to just spiral the way that he did. But when he was in his prime of prime, I thought it was paramount that they keep him around, because whenever Ben Roethlisberger's career was over, they had another guy coming in. You'd want that running back position, the guy that can kind of hold the offense together, to be around and to be that guy that can kind of hold fast. And with Le'Veon Bell forcing his way out of Pittsburgh and then spiraling in his NFL career, that was gone from the Steelers. They had a bridge situation with James Conner. They tried to survive, and then they went and got Najee Harris. And to me, that was their sign of we want Najee Harris to kind of become the face of the offense. Because, Najee Harris's shelf life of his prime is probably 5 to 6 years. It's probably not going to be, that long. And it might not even be that long with the way that he's been carrying the ball and touching it. But if he serves to be that bridge, if he's that playmaker and that leader that sets the table for whenever Kenny Pickett does come up and is ready to take on the not just the starting quarterback role, but a leader while being a starting quarterback role, I think that is such a big role that it doesn't show on the X's and O's. It just shows in the locker room. It just shows in the organizational integrity and how the Steelers operate moving forward.
Yeah, other than maybe saying a little bit more to guys, he doesn't really have to change who he is. That's the other thing. Sometimes you try to make a captain and a guy's just not ready for it, doesn't have the personality for it. I think Najee does. He's got the confidence. He likes to joke around with the guys. He brings that work ethic. And, you mentioned the succession. Look at it on defense. It is the way you want it. You got Cam Hayward 8 years in a row. TJ Watt is working into that. And then you sign Minka too. So when Cam is gone, you've got leaders that are going to follow leaders. And hopefully for the Steelers offensively, even if it's not Mitch for a long period of time, you know that Najee's going to be around for at least 4 or 5 years, and then that mantle can start to get passed. Who knows? Maybe one of these young offensive linemen, hits and becomes that leader. I think everybody thought at the beginning of the year it'd be James Daniels, although, his performance to date has a lot of us wondering a little bit. Yeah.
We'll certainly get to that quarterback discussion because the official depth chart of the Steelers was released, and oh my gosh, Kenny Pickett was QB3. And I want Steelers fans to take a deep breath and realize it's okay. They're not crazy. You're not crazy. This is just how things work. We'll explain why things work that way in just a minute. But first, I got to talk to you guys about our great sponsor, Prize Picks. Now, Prize Picks, as I said before, it's a fun new way of playing daily fantasy football and fantasy sports in general that everyone needs to start playing right now. If you're big into fantasy sports, this is an easier way to play it. You'll be able to play this in an easy way. You could simply pick 2 to 5 players that you think you have a beat on for how they're going to play in this fantasy. And again, this is NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, even college sports are involved here. But you pick those 5 players and you see the lines that Prize Pick has set. Does this person get 50 yards, 50 rushing yards, more or less? And that's all you do. They say, hey, do you think Saquon Barkley's going to get a touchdown and a half, 2 touchdowns? They'll give you a number. You say more or less. If you hit, you win. And as you pick anywhere between 2 to 5 players, you get a chance to have a full entry. And then with that entry, you can make up to 10 times the money that you put down on Prize Picks. So go download the Prize Picks apps today, or go to prizepicks.com to sign up to play daily fantasy sports. First time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match for up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On, all capital letters, all one word. Again, promo code Locked On to sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100 at prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app in whatever phone apps that you download. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter. He's Jeff Hathhorn. Let's talk about this QB depth chart, Jeff, because everyone was losing their minds when the Steelers dropped it. It was, yeah, right, exactly. Just face on YouTube here if you're watching, just to show it. So the depth chart was this. It was Mitch Trubisky at 1, Mason Rudolph at 2, and Kenny Pickett at 3. And I even said at one point, I think we lost Jeff's camera. There we go. Jeff's back. I even said at one point during the offseason, do not be surprised if that's what happens, right? Because I can totally see them liking Kenny Pickett, saying he's making the right kind of progress. But in a pinch of a game, say Mitch Trubisky gets hurt and it's like late in the 4th quarter, and you're like, we just need one drive. Maybe you go with Mason because he's been in those type of situations before in the NFL, or maybe you go with Pickett. But this does not mean that Kenny Pickett definitely won't play this year. It does not mean that he's a bum or he's terrible or a wasted pick or anything like that, because I know people are taking everything to the nth degree. Jeff, tell people why this ain't so crazy.
You know what I want to have right now? I want to have Samuel L. Jackson read Twitter because his voice could do it great with all the freaking out that's going on right now.
Oh, man.
And the other thing is everybody tripping over themselves to say, I told you first about Mitch Trubisky. I think that was my daughter that was calling and interrupting us because she was going to tell me, I told you first that Mitch Trubisky was going to be because everybody said, of course, anyone who watched practice knows that Trubisky was getting the first team reps. This is not a shocker. I have to admit, I was surprised that it was Mason Rudolph as the second team quarterback. There are a couple of reasons for that. I mean, you hit on one. Here's the thing. What is something that was said in this process? If you need somebody short term, you might want Mason. If you have a long-term injury to your starting quarterback, you're going to go to Kenny. So this is what's weird about it is it's been since Dwayne Haskins, the final game of his rookie year, that a first-round pick quarterback didn't dress for a game. And there's a good possibility that Kenny Pickett won't dress. Now, is that in stone? No. This is the first time we've dealt with this. I don't think they'll dress 3 quarterbacks, but it's not in stone that it would be Mason that would be dressing on Sunday because, to your earlier point, maybe this is a way for them to say, hey, we really believe in this guy. Mm-hmm. Maybe you want to give us that 4th round pick.
Right. Maybe this is the long play the Steelers have to trade him away to be like, oh, see, guys, like he's not actually the 3rd string quarterback. He's a 2nd string quarterback. Go flop that better draft pick there.
That's exactly. I mean, there's a lot of games that could be going on here. And, the other thing is maybe you do it because Kenny's more like Joe Burrow. So the look that you want in practice is that
Very
scout
good point.
team, from Kenny Pickett more so than Mason Rudolph, which is why I thought Oladokin made sense for, a lot of people when you thought, okay, what are they going to do with the quarterback? Well, if they brought Oladokin back, obviously he signed with the Chiefs practice squad, but if they would have brought him back, he can show you a lot of different looks at quarterback. So that made sense. But I do believe that they're still looking to trade or would listen to offers from Mason Rudolph. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. They're fine. But this could be all part of this game. It's the first time we've seen Tomlin deal with this, so we're all learning as we go.
And that's the other thing about this, Jeff, is that people want to act like this is like I had one comment on YouTube like, oh, same old Steelers and how they deal with quarterbacks. I'm like, where?
Right.
Who? This has been Ben Roethlisberger's show since 2004. I was a sophomore in high school.
And
what
Chris,
are y'all talking about?
When Ben Roethlisberger was a rookie, he started out as a what team quarterback?
Third.
3.
Exactly.
And it was because of an injury to Charlie Batch that he moved up to 2, and an injury obviously to Tommy Maddox to give him his opportunity to start. And who knows, that scenario could very well happen with Kenny Pickett, especially with what we've seen, at times with the offensive line.
It certainly could happen. And again, this was why all my thing, I don't put out the possibility the Steelers later trade Mason Rudolph, but I didn't think coming out of training camp and going into this season that they would trade him, because they were just 3 years ago, Jeff. It was 2019 when they were down to Devlin Hodges. That's not out of their rearview mirror. They're looking at that like, man, especially with this offensive line, we don't know how Mitch is going to play. Mitch has never played a full, complete season as a starter, when he was with the Bears. Say he gets hurt, and then Kenny takes a big hit because Kenny still doesn't know how to slide. He like dives for first downs. Say he takes one big hit, and then you're down to Chris Oladokin, who's not even there anymore. Like, you need those options. And to me, like, this was always going to be the plan, was to have these 3 guys ready for the season. And again, Mason Rudolph, I know a lot of people hate him. A lot of people like, say things, and like, I'm not a Mason Rudolph lover. I don't think that he's a guy that needs to be your starting quarterback. If he is your starting quarterback, you need to play some great defense that day, and you need to run the football.
Right.
But he has the second most starts of any quarterback in the Mike Tomlin era of the Pittsburgh Steelers, only behind Ben Roethlisberger. And that's worth something. It's worth, in the pinch, having him on the roster. So when you see that QB3 next to Kenny Pickett's name, don't take it for the gospel.
You know what Mason Rudolph reminds me of? Like, he should be the third McCown brother. Like, he's a guy, he's going to have 10 years plus as a backup. You don't want him as your starter.
Right.
But you want him there to play a couple of games if needed. If it's more than that, you don't want that. But if you're looking for, and look at some of the backups in the league. I mean, the Steelers quarterback trio is arguably as good as anybody's in the league. Somebody's going to get hurt. I still think Mason has some value, so I don't think this whole thing is over. We'll see how it plays out. I know there is freaking out. I get it. But it's not like Kenny was going to sub in anyway. Mitch is going to play. It's not a preseason game. Mitch isn't going to play the first half, and then Kenny was going to come in after halftime. It's Mitch's team right now.
Right.
It's not Kenny's. It's not Mason's. It's Mitch's.
Absolutely. And that's further solidified by Mitch getting the captain spot for the offense. And make no mistake, I think he earned it, not just for his play on the field, but how he led and how he was in the locker room. And again, I think, high quality guys, that's who the Steelers want to get. You look at that quarterback room, Mason Rudolph, they drafted a guy and they signed a guy after him. And in both situations, he called them as soon as they were added to the team, and he said, "Welcome to the team. Let's get to work. I want to help make sure that you're getting up to speed." And in the locker room, you were in the locker room every day.
Yeah.
You were at training camp every day, right? With you and I, we saw that. Never once did Mason Rudolph be like, "Man, forget them dudes over there. I'm the real quarter." He never made a spectacle.
Listen, Chris, I think from the administration to the coaching staff to the players, they've handled this about as well as you can. Mm-hmm. There's been no backbiting. There's been no passive-aggressive messages sent on social media. I think the worst thing that was said was before the last preseason game, and Mason said, "I wish I would have had more time with the first team."
Right.
Like, that was the controversial thing, which was just him being honest. I think all of these guys have handled it well. When Kenny came in, man, I'm the first round pick. I'm from Pitt. I'm coming in. and he was third team for a long time.
Yep.
He handled it really well. There was no sense that he felt like he was treated wrong or that why do I have to fight my way back up? He just put his nose down and did it. And that's how we rose up to what we thought was the number 2 spot, probably will be the number 2 spot, and undoubtedly be the number 1 spot at some point.
At some point. And yeah, like you said, there was no drama. Like Mason saying that one thing was all you got. There was no, oh my gosh, did you guys see Kenny Pickett? The Steelers aren't in his Instagram bio anymore. Like, does that mean he hates the Steelers? NFL Network, we got to talk about Kenny Pickett taking the Steelers out of his Instagram. And you see it happening. It was happening with the Cardinals and Kyler Murray. It happens everywhere. You don't have none of that. I think it's exactly how this, like you said, the Steelers handled it the way they wanted to, and they got 3 quarterbacks who each of them they feel confident if you put them in an NFL game, you can at least do something with them in your offense. But Mitch Trubisky was always going to be the guy. I think we get to see what the coaches have seen in him more this weekend. And
Chris, I'm anxious to see what it is. I mean, you see glimpses of it. We've seen a lot of practice. There are times it's looked good. There are times it's looked bad. It's not like watching Ben when he was young. Like you could tell there was something really special, but there's also can be something special about a guy looking for another chance.
Yes.
This is his opportunity. Let's see what he makes of it. I don't know if he has all of the tools at his disposal, but you know what? If he gets enough time or can create enough time, I like the receivers. I like Najee Harris. I like the tight end. I think there's an opportunity for them to score some points if they can get enough time, because here's the other thing, and this is going to jinx it, and everybody can come yell at me on Sunday. None of these quarterbacks turned it over in the preseason.
That's a very great point, and I thought that was a huge thing. And how many preseason games have you sat through, Jeff Hathhorn, where the Steelers' offense was just terrible, boring, and just never did anything in a preseason game? In every preseason game, first, second, third team, there was a sense of like, hey, they could probably score on this drive.
Yeah, that first preseason game was like a regular season game. The crowd was into it. There was competition. Crazy. It's something the fans hadn't seen in 2 decades, so I get it. But yeah, I agree with you. I think they have an option. They could make it work with any one of their 3 quarterbacks.
Absolutely. We're going to talk a little bit of defense in just a second here. I know I've talked a lot of offense with Jeff. We'll get to that in a minute because we want to look at these cornerbacks and how they're looking ahead of facing the Bengals wide receivers, who are a tough bunch. But first, we got to talk to you guys about Built Bar and the cookie dough chunk puff flavor. If you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you're missing out because you're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. Guess what? There's a new flavor. It's called the cookie dough chunk puff flavor. Now, everyone knows if you've ever tried cookie dough, it's an awesome flavor by itself. But with the Built Bar Puffs, the puffs are like marshmallowy Built Bars that are also light in calories for you, but they pack the protein and they taste amazing. So imagine having all the joys of eating cookie dough, but it actually being healthy for you. That's where cookie dough chunk puffs come in. They're only 160 calories, but they pack a whopping 15 grams of protein. Run to Built.com right now and snag yourself a box for you and the family. It'll be a perfect treat, or you can find a really good hiding place and just hoard them all for yourself. Like all Built Bars. Exactly. And I've done that. I have them in my house. My family cannot touch them. They can go somewhere else. I'm getting my cookie dough chunk puffs in. They're covered in 100% real chocolate, which means they're healthy and tasty, and they're chocolate covered cookie dough, light fluffy texture. This is just amazing. You're gonna love this new flavor. Go to Built.com right now. Use the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15 LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your next order when you visit Built.com to get yourself some cookie dough chunk puff Built Puffs. Back here on the Tuesday edition of the Locked On Steelers podcast. It's Jeff Hathhorn from 93.7 The Fan here with your host, Chris Carter. Jeff, let's talk about the defense. The Bengals wide receiver core was one of the biggest things that broke onto the scene, namely because of Jamar Chase last year. We knew Tyler Boyd was good. We knew we had an idea that T. Higgins was good, but we didn't know how good he could be. And the 3 of them tore people up. They tore the Steelers up a few times last year. Jamar Chase had his first 2 touchdown performance against the Steelers the first time around. In the second time around, he wasn't as much of a factor, but they were also blowing out the Steelers, so it didn't really matter. T. Higgins was the one with 6 catches, 114 receiving yards, and a touchdown. The Steelers, though, They didn't make crazy moves at the cornerback position. They went and got Levi Wallace. They brought back, Cam Sutton's still around. They brought back Ahkello Witherspoon. They made sure, hey, you got 3 veterans on the outside, Arthur Maulet on the inside. Sutton can also help on the inside. You also have Trey Norwood, who sometimes helps as a dime guy. Is this cornerback room ready for the Bengals, or is this about to be a massive torching on Sunday?
Well, a quick aside. You remember last year with the Bengals where they said, oh, they picked these receivers. They've got all these receivers, but the line stinks. No one's going to be able to get them the ball. Remember that offensively. Now, for the defense, I like Witherspoon.
I like him, yeah.
I thought at times at camp, he's had to guard Pickens. Like, he welcomed those challenges, and he's got some length. He's got some reach. I mean, he tipped some passes away. He was their leading interceptor. He started 3 games for them last year.
Yep.
I think Witherspoon has some talent. They saw something in him. I don't know if it clicked. It took a while for it to click for him, but I think Witherspoon's fine. I'm not going to say he's a shutdown. He's not Darrelle Revis. I'm not saying that. But I think he's a good number 1. Cam Sutton, I like him more inside than outside. But, there are 2 starters, but there are 3 guys in the secondary. Levi Wallace is going to play some as well. It's not the best secondary in the league. It's probably somewhere in the middle, but I think they have a lot of upside. And you know what else they have? They have T.J. Watt getting after the quarterback.
Yes.
And when you got T.J. Watt, Cam Heyward, you add Ogunjobi, you add a Malik Reed along with Alex Highsmith, I like their opportunity, even though the Bengals have a revamped or on paper at least better offensive line, get that pressure. That'll minimize some of those plays.
And I talked about this for yesterday's episode, that the run defense has to be there to force those plays to be there.
Right.
But you're absolutely right, Jeff, because this has been the Steelers' path to success before. Ike Taylor was never the premier cornerback of the NFL, but what made him and Deshae Townsend work was they stuffed the run, they got after the quarterback, and eventually when quarterbacks got desperate because of that, then these veteran cornerbacks were able to jump on the bad passes, be in position, and say, hey, if you fit the ball into this tight window, good job, great throw, great catch, you earned that. But we're going to make you earn that. And I think that's what the Steelers' philosophy is going to be.
Right. And you remember the great defenses under Dick LeBeau, they bent. They didn't break.
Exactly.
They gave up yardage. I mean, people think, in Dick LeBeau, they gave up like 50 yards a game. They didn't give up 100-yard runners, which started, as to your point, that really keyed their defense. They allowed passing yards, but, man, once they got to the red zone, they were going to clamp down on you. And that's where they won the game. And I think this Steelers defense has some of the similar things, but they have to be able, and I'm sorry to copy your point, but it's so true.
Right.
Man, if it's second and third and manageable, this defense, any defense is in trouble. They've got to be able to stop that run. And if they do stop that run, if some of the pieces that they brought in, including Miles Jack, can help stuff that run, I think the secondary is good enough, even without Joe Hayden, to be, to make some plays. And for Minka to be able to get some turnovers. And it's a shame KZ got hurt, because I think they were playing some mad scientists back there before KZ got hurt about some different things they could do. They might do some of it with Norwood, but when KZ gets back, I think it could be a lot of fun back there.
I think it is too. I talked about this a lot during training camp. I loved what I was seeing. Minka would go here and KZ would go there and Edmonds would go there, and then they would flip it all around. And I'm like, man, if I'm a quarterback and I have to think about that while worrying about where TJ Watt and Cam Heyward are, that kind of stuff, it really works. It does create turnover opportunities. And like you said, this isn't a supreme cornerback room, but this is a veteran quarterback room, an experience. Everyone's got 4, 5, 6 years in their NFL career. These guys have been around the block. They're going to know what it takes to kind of rise up every week and kind of study your opponent, get ready for their strengths and their weaknesses, and head into it. I'd be shocked if you saw Jamar Chase pull off another super long touchdown, or like a Henry Ruggs touchdown, the way that when Ruggs got Ahkello Witherspoon in his first appearance last year before he came back and had a really great end to the season. I'd be shocked if you see that in this game, because I think they're protecting against those guys having big days. But I like the way you're putting it, because it's like, hey, this cornerback room isn't going to make you jump out your socks, but if everything else works, they have the experience, the know-how, and they do have the skill to win enough of those battles to make this a competitive matchup with the Bengals wide receivers.
And Chris, before Devin Bush came along, it was Terrell Edmonds that was the punching bag because he was the first round pick that couldn't get it done.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a lot of complaining about Terrell Edmonds last year. They brought him back for a year. I think he and Minkah make it really solid in the middle, and that's going to allow these. Again, this is maybe you don't want to throw there. Maybe you're taking chances to the outside. I like the way this defense. There's a reason that people have a lot of respect for the Steeler defense, and it's not just T.J. Watt or Cam Heyward. It isn't. I mean, there's some other pieces that go along with this group.
There certainly is. Joe Hayden talked about the year that Minkah Fitzpatrick arrived, how he felt so much comfortable jumping a pass because he knew Minkah had his back.
Right.
And to me, if Joe Hayden's saying that about you when you're in your second year in the NFL, imagine the confidence that an experienced two-time first-team All-Pro safety Minkah Fitzpatrick is giving these veteran cornerbacks who are able to balance that. Now they've worked with him. They know who he is. They can make those kind of gambles. I think this is going to be I still give the advantage to the Bengals receiving core because Jamar Chase is just a beast, but I don't think that this is just a push over. The Bengals wide receivers are just going to torch the Steelers cornerbacks. I think this is going to be a back and forth battle, and where this gets won is if the Steelers force them into tougher situations, and then we get to see how well do the Bengals battle back when the Steelers know the pass is coming. We'll talk about that as the week goes on. Jeff, thanks so much for being here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. You've been awesome. It's so much fun to have you on the show. We will have you back, and I always enjoy hanging out with this man. I'm telling y'all, understand the Hathhorn hustle. This guy has it down pat. But Jeff, let me know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at jhathhorn, and you can also find our stuff at 937thefan.com. We're part of the Odyssey family that Locked On is part of as well.
Yes,
so we're glad to be all together as one group and enjoyed it, Chris, man. I respect the stuff you do. You played it, you know it, and you preach it. Good job.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Thanks for being here. We always appreciate that. I'm Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram at Carter Critiques. You can follow this show, the Locked On Steelers podcast, on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you watch this video on YouTube, hit the like button in this video. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to our YouTube channel to get all of our episodes Monday through Friday and our bonus content. And if you want to help us out even further, go on Apple Podcasts, rate us 5 stars with a positive comment. Do both at the same time. You get a shout out at the end of the show. Thanks again. You can also read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I just wrote about how the Pitt Panthers see themselves as underdogs this week, but how they earn that title. If you're excited about how Pitt plays Tennessee this weekend, go to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. That's up there right now. Jeff, thanks again. I'll be back tomorrow with more on your Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.